and I'd like to welcome the Minister to the House, and I'd like to speak in favour of this bill. And I suppose I also want to commend Senator Warfield on his work and his staff on the work on this, and also his colleagues for their hard work in preparing it. And I really do hope we can progress it quickly. You know, any legislation will go through scrutiny and detailed reading in a relevant committee, and that can only be helpful in progressing bills forward. But the proposal before us today is very strong and something we should support. I'm not going to speak at length about nuts and bolts of the legislation itself, because obviously my colleague Senator Warfield has given a clear, thoughtful overview of why this proposal is needed and its practical impact. It's a very straightforward, common-sense proposal. In fact, I have to say that I'm quite surprised that the Property Services Rental Authority or some other similar body isn't already carrying out the kind of oversight function proposed by this bill. Now, I know, Minister, you may feel that systems for quality control are in place, but the examples cited by the senators appearing in newspapers every week are surely evidence that they aren't working properly. The stories of large groups of people, often migrants or members of other disadvantaged communities, sharing tiny, cramped rooms are disgraceful. And I've no doubt you agree with that, Minister. I mean, look, I was reared in the tenements in the 60s and 70s. You know, I know what it's like to live in a house that's full of people. You know, the house right next door to us was just jam-packed with families, and 10 children in each family. So I know what it's like. But today it's different, because we're talking. I mean, back then there was a community spirit and everybody looked after it. But these are all adults who are cramped into tiny little rooms, and it's just degrading, to be honest with you, and it's a horrendous way for any human being to live. And you know, we recently opened a new tenement museum on Henrietta Street, but looking at some of the situations and rental properties in Dublin today, a museum may not be necessary, and that's the reality. And I am glad to see the Union of Students in Ireland coming in behind this legislation and other proposals on housing. They are right to fight this awful situation, and they have my full support. In terms of the bill before us, it's not a radical proposal to say that letting agents should assume a meaningful level of responsibility for what's being advertised. Now, you'd agree that you wouldn't let a car dealership, they shouldn't be advertising and facilitating the sale of vehicles below the minimum legal standards. And similarly, I don't believe letting agents should be facilitating rental properties that do not meet the legal minimum standards. We set these legal standards for a reason, and we need to ensure that they are actually being met. I also think it's important to say that this shouldn't place too high a burden on the letting agents. So looking at the bill, I think the most likely outcome in practice would be that individuals will see and report these sorts of properties. The PSRA will make an assessment and then issue direction to the letting agents themselves. The agents aren't going to need to do massive, exhausting reporting. Similarly, I think the process like this might also make some letting agents reconsider the quality controls they do put in place, which can help further. So, and I just want to make a comment on Senator Coffey and the fact that he said scaring landlords out of existence. And I will say some of them do need to be scared out of existence, to be honest with you, because honestly what they're doing is horrendous. So anyway, overall I think there's a deep frustration right across the opposition that while we can keep fighting on this issue, we can't ourselves allocate the resources needed to fix the crisis fully. Restrictions on the right of opposition to legislate often mean we can't compel the state to do things like build social and affordable housing. That is ultimately the decision of the government, and while they may stick to the contention that the current policies are working, I would ask you, Minister, again to look at the evidence in the numbers on paper and on Dublin streets and to reconsider this position. Minister, you're a good man. You are a good man, and I know that you're very authentic and you care. You do care. You know, so I would ask you to reconsider this. I really would. What the opposition can do, however, is look at how the systems in operating at the moment and try to improve on that. We can look, for example, at the dysfunctional rental market and how it works in practice. We can see obvious, fixable problems like below-standard properties being advertised and try to address them. This bill takes an important step in that direction, and I commend it to the House. Gurmina Mahaka.